First Kings chapter 7. But it took Solomon 13 years to build and complete his own place. He also built the forest house of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, built on 4 rows of cedar pillars with cedar beams upon the pillars. It was paneled with cedar above the side chambers, which were on 45 pillars, 15 in a row. And there were window frames in 3 rows, with window opposite window in 3 ranks, and all the doorways had a rectangular frame, and with window opposite to window in 3 tiers. He also made a portico of columns, 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide, with a porch in front, and in front of that were pillars and an overhanging roof. He also made the hall of the throne where he would judge, the hall of justice. It was paneled with cedar from the floor to the ceiling. His house, where he would dwell, set farther back of the hall, was of the same construction. He also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom Solomon had taken to wife. All these were made of expensive stones, stones cut to size and sawed with saws inside and outside, from the foundation to the top and from the outside to the great court. The foundation was also made of expensive stones, huge stones, stones 8 cubits and stones 10 cubits. Above were expensive stones cut to measure and cedar wood. The surrounding great courtyard had 3 rows of cut stone and a row of cedar beams, the same as the inner court of the house of Adonai and the portico of the house. King Solomon sent for and had Hiram brought from Tyre. He was a widow's son from the tribe of Naphtali, while his father was a man of Tyre, a coppersmith, and he was filled with wisdom, understanding, and skill to do any work in bronze. So he came to King Solomon and executed all this work. He fashioned the 2 bronze pillars, 18 cubits high and 12 cubits in circumference each. He also made 2 capitals of molten bronze to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of each capital was 5 cubits. Netting of lattice work and twisted threads of chain work for the capitals were on top of the pillars, 7 for the one capital and 7 for the other capital. He made the pillars with 2 rows of pomegranates all around on the netting covering the capitals on top of each capital. The capitals that were on top of the pillars in the portico were of lily design, 4 cubits high, so also the capitals on the 2 pillars. Close to the belly, next to the netting, were the pomegranates in rows of 200 around both capitals. Thus he set up the pillars at the porticos of the temple. He set up the right pillar and named it Yakin, and he set up the left pillar and named it Boaz. On top of the pillars were lily design, so the work of the pillars was finished. Next he made the sea of cast metal, 10 cubits across from brim to brim, circular in form, 5 cubits in its height and 30 cubits in circumference. Under its brim there were gourds encircling it, 10 per cubit, completely surrounding the sea. The gourds were cast in 2 rows in one piece with it. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set on top of them, and all their rear parts were inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was made like the brim of a cup, like the petals of a lily, its length 11,000 gallons. Then he made 10 bases of bronze. The length of each base was 4 cubits, the width 4 cubits, and the height 3 cubits. The structure of the bases was as follows. They had borders and borders between the frames, and on the borders that were below the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. On the frames there were a pedestal manner above, and beneath the lions and oxen were wreaths of hanging work. Each base had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles. Its 4 legs had brackets. The brackets were beneath the laver, cast with wreaths at each side. Its opening inside the crown at the top was a cubit high, and its opening was round like the design of a pedestal, a cubit and a half, and also on its opening were engravings, and their borders were square, not round. The four wheels were underneath the borders, and the axles of the wheels were in the base. The height of a wheel was a cubit and a half, and the structure of the wheels was like the structure of a chariot wheel. Their axle trees, their rims, their spokes, their hubs were all cast metal. There were 4 brackets at the 4 corners of each base. Each bracket was of one piece with the base itself. On top of the base, there were a band half a cubit high encircling it. Its braces and its borders were part of it. On the plates of the braces and on its borders, he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, wherever there was clear space around each, with encircling reeds. He made the 10 bases like this, all of them cast from the same mold, the same size and same shape. And then he made 10 basin of bronze. One basin held 20 gallons. Each basin were 4 cubits, and on each of the 10 bases was one basin. Then he set up the laver stands, 5 on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house, and set up the sea of cast metal on the right side of the house eastward toward the south. Then Hiram made the basins, the shovels, the sprinkling bowls. So Hiram finished doing all the work that he performed for King Solomon on Adonai's house. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, the 2 netting to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 nettings, 2 rows of pomegranates for each to cover the 2 bowls of the capital on top of the pillars, the 10 bases and the 10 basins on the bases, the 1 sea and the 12 oxen under the sea, the pots, the shovels, and the basins. All these vessels Hiram made for King Solomon in the house of Adonai were made of polished bronze. The king had them cast in the plain of the Jordan with clay of the ground between Succoth and Jerethan. Solomon left all the vessels unweighed because they were too many. The weight of the bronze could not be determined. So Solomon made all the equipment that was to be in the house of Adonai, the golden altar, the table on which was the bread of the presence, of gold, the menorot, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left in front of the inner sanctuary of pure gold, the flowers and the lamps and the tongs of gold, the cups, the snuffers, the bowls and wick trimmers and fire pans of pure gold, the hinges for the doors of the inner house and the Holy of Holies, for the doors of the house that is of the temple of gold. When all the work that King Solomon did in Adonai's house was finished, Solomon brought in the things that his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and put them in the treasuries of the house of Adonai. Chapter 8. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, and the ancestral chieftains of the children of Israel to King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring the ark of the covenant of Adonai up from the city of David, which is Zion. All the men of Israel assembled themselves to King Solomon at the feast in the month of Etham, which is 7th month. Then all the elders of Israel came, and the Kohanim brought up the ark. They brought up the ark of Adonai, the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. The Kohanim and the Levites brought them up. Now King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled to him were with him before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and oxen that they could not be numbered or counted. The Kohanim brought the ark of the covenant of Adonai to its place into the inner sanctuary of the house, to the Holy of Holies, under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread out their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubim covered the ark and its poles from above. But the poles were so long that the ends of the poles were seen from the holy place before the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen outside. There they are to this day. Nothing was in the ark except the 2 tables of stone that Moshe put there at Horeb, when Adonai cut a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. Now, when the Kohanim came out of the holy place, the cloud filled the house of Adonai, so that the Kohanim could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of Adonai filled the house of Adonai. Then Solomon spoke. Adonai said that he would dwell in the thick cloud. I have surely built you a magnificent house, a place for your dwelling forever. Then the king turned his face about and blessed the whole congregation of Israel. While the whole congregation of Israel was standing, he said, Blessed be Adonai, the God of Israel, who spoke with his mouth to my father David, and has fulfilled it by his hand, saying, Since the day I brought my people Israel out from Egypt, I have not chosen a city out of all the tribes of Israel to build a house where my name will be there. But I have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of my father David to build a house for the name of Adonai, the God of Israel. But Adonai said to my father David, Because it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless, you will not build the house, but your son who will come out of your loins, he shall build the house for my name. Now Adonai has fulfilled his word that he spoke, for I have risen in the place of my father David, and sit on the throne of Israel, as Adonai promised. Also I have built the house for the name of Adonai, the God of Israel, and have set there a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of Adonai, which he made with our fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Then Solomon stood before the altar of Adonai in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, spread out his hands towards heaven, and said, Adonai, God of Israel, there is none like you in heaven, above or on earth below, keeping covenant and loving kindness to your servants who walk before you with all their heart. You have kept what you promised with your servant David, my father. Yes, you spoke with your mouth and fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, Adonai, God of Israel, keep with your servant David, my servant, my father, what you have promised him, saying, You shall not lack a man to sit before me on the throne of Israel, if only your children watch their way, walking before me as you have walked before me. Now therefore, God of Israel, please let your word be confirmed, which you spoke to your servant, to my father David. So will God really dwell on the earth? Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? Nevertheless, turn to the prayer of your servant and to his supplication, Adonai my God, to listen to the cry and to the prayer which your servant prays before you this day. Let your eyes be open toward this house night and day, toward the place of which you have said, My name shall be there, listening to the prayer which your servant shall pray toward this place. So listen to the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray toward this place, here in heaven, your dwelling place, and when you hear, forgive. If a man sins against his neighbor and is made to take an oath, then comes and swears before your altar in this house, then hear from heaven and act and judge your servants, condemning the wicked, bringing his way on his own head, and justifying the righteous, giving him according to his righteousness. When your people Israel are defeated before an enemy, because they have sinned against you, if they turn back to you and confess your name, and pray and make supplication to you in this house, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your people Israel, and bring them back to the land which you gave to their fathers. When the skies are shut up and there is no rain, because they have sinned against you, yet if they pray toward this place and confess your name, and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your servants and your people Israel. Teach them the good way in which they should walk, and send rain on your land, which you gave to your people as an inheritance. If there is famine in the land, if there is pestilence, if there be blight or mildew, locust or caterpillar, If their enemy should besiege them in the land of their cities, whatever plague or sickness, when prayer or supplication is made by anyone or by all your people Israel, each knowing the plague of his own heart, when one spreads his hands towards his house, then you may hear from heaven your dwelling place. Forgive and act, and give to each man according to all his ways, as you know his heart to be. For you alone know the hearts of all children of men. Then they will fear you all the days that they live in the land that you gave to our fathers. Moreover, concerning the foreigner who is not of your people Israel, when he comes from a distant country because of your name, for they will hear of your great name, of your mighty hand and your outstretched arm, when he comes to pray towards this house, then may you hear from heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner asks of you, so all the peoples of the earth may know your name, to fear you as your people Israel do, and know that this house and that I have built is called by your name. When your people go out to battle against their enemy, by whatever way you send them, and they pray to Adonai toward the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name, then hear from heaven their prayer and their supplication, and maintain their cause. If they sin against you, for there is no man that does not sin, and you become angry with them and deliver them to their enemy, and their captors carry them away a captive, the land of the enemy, far off or near, yet if they take it to the heart in the land which they have chosen, which they have been carried captive, and they repent and make supplication to you in the land of their captors, saying, we have sinned, we have committed iniquity, we have acted wickedly, and they return to you with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their enemies, who carried them into exile, and pray to you toward their land that you gave to their fathers, the city that you have chosen, and the house which I have built for your name, then hear their prayer and their supplication in heaven, your dwelling place, maintaining their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you, as well as all their transgressions they have transgressed against you, and grant them mercy before their captors, so they may have mercy on them. For they are your people and your inheritance that you brought out of Egypt, out of the middle of the iron furnace. May your eyes be open to the supplication of your servant, and to supplication of your people Israel, listening to them whenever they cry to you. For you have set them apart from among all the peoples of the earth to be your inheritance, as you spoke by the hand of Moshe, your servant, when you brought our fathers out of Egypt, my Lord Adonai. When Solomon finished praying this entire prayer and petition to Adonai, he arose from before the altar of Adonai, from kneeling on his knees with his hands spread out toward the heaven. When he stood and blessed all the congregation of Israel with a loud voice, saying, Blessed be Adonai, who has given rest to his people Israel, according to all that he promised. Not a single word has failed of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moshe his servant. May Adonai Eloheinu be with us as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us nor forsake us. May he incline our hearts to him, to walk in all his ways, to keep his mitzvot, his statutes, and his ordinances, which he commanded our fathers. May these words of mine, with which I have made supplication before Adonai, be near Adonai Eloheinu day and night, so that he may maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel, as each day requires. May all the peoples of the earth know that Adonai, he is God, there is no other. Let your heart therefore be wholly devoted to Adonai Eloheinu, to walk in his statutes and to keep his commandments as to this day. Now the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifice before Adonai. Solomon offered a sacrifice of fellowship offerings to Adonai, 22,000 oxen and 120 sheep. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of Adonai. On that same day the king consecrated the middle of the court that was before the house of Adonai, for there he offered the burnt offerings and the grain offering and the fat of the fellowship offerings because this bronze altar that was before Adonai was too small to accommodate the burnt offering, the grain offering, and the fat of the fellowship offerings. So Solomon and all Israel with him celebrated the festival at that time, a great congregation from the entrance of Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt, before Adonai Eloheinu 7 days, then 7 more days, 14 days in all. On the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king, and went to their tents joyful and glad of heart over all the goodness that Adonai had shown to his servant David and to his people Israel.